Hi guys, welcome to the Brandon Smith Rugby channel here on YouTube, and it's time for the Irish Interpros as Munster, first of all, on Friday night, host Connacht down at Thomond Park. Here is your preview of that game. I was joined by the guys over at Overlap Rugby. Thank you so much for your time, guys. It was brilliant to preview both sets of games. I will be doing a watch along for this game on Friday night, going live at 7:15 with kickoff at 7:25. So do join me for that. As always, if you're new here, subscribe. Thank you for 1K subs, and be sure to like the video and comment your predictions down below. Let's get into the video. Munster against Connacht. Big game, obviously. Two teams on top of Conference B. Munster last time beat Cardiff Blues away from home, 20 points to 11, while Connacht they beat Bennett on 17 points, 19 out in Italy. Let's start with the home team. What are your thoughts on Munster this season? Have you been impressed by them? And are they serious title contenders this year, do you think?
Definitely they're title contenders. I mean, if you can't include them on the short list of title contenders, it's a short list of one. They've been absolute quality, and they've expanded their. I've been really impressed with how they've expanded their game. Yeah. They this season, broadly speaking, you've got guys like Coombs coming through in the back row, married with Dale Lindy, who they brought in, has brought like an offloading game and a sharpness. Like they've always been able to bust the line. They've always had a big pack. They still have that. But actually, the other one I'd add to those three is Casey, the young scrum half, has been a catalyst for it. And with Casey, the young scrum half at 9, Coombs, this marauding, classy back row forward, and Dale Lindy in the midfield, they're busting holes, but they're doing it at pace and now with offloads. Yeah. And hence they're finding much more tries. So they're a much less blunt instrument than they have been in seasons gone by. And yet they've maintained that same sort of ferocity up front where their worst quality is that they give away a lot of penalties because they're such an aggressive pack. Yeah. They play for turnovers. They play for big defensive plays. They don't just sit back and wait.
You're either winning penalties or losing penalties when you're kind of making plays like that the whole time. They can be, when they're a little off, they do get on the wrong side of the refs sometimes, but like they're still. Their type 5, as you said, is just levels apart from the vast majority of this competition. Even on their day, they can bully a Leinster pack as well. Like they really are physical and really good scrummagers. Not just their starting team, but their reserves as well. Their reserve props and stuff are really all to a man, able to lock down a scrum and scrummage aggressively. And that's very often enough, even if they're not performing that well in this league. It has been for seasons to just kind of flex their muscles and win a little ugly at times, whereas as you correctly say, with the introduction of these new players, you had Ben Healy breaking out in the 10 jersey in the early half of the season. Now you have Joey Carberry coming back from injury. Couple that with all those players you mentioned, there's real potential for them to use more of the pitch to attack in, and it feels like they're realizing that. Guys like Dale Lindy is a more assured operator than they've had in the centre in a long time, and it gives them, as well as the ballast and kind of the heft that they like, it gives them a little bit more subtlety as well and just more experience. So they're proper title contenders, 100%. It's going to come down between those two.
I actually don't think they're that far away from being a complete team. It's the discipline is the key thing, but they're going about it exactly the right way. They haven't lost any of their physicality, but they have completely expanded their attacking game. Yeah. And there's real promise. Craig Casey, for me, right now looks like he's going to be the Irish 9, possibly for the next number of years. Like if you were taking bets on who's the Irish 9 at the next World Cup, I would have Craig Casey at the top of that list, just on talent alone. He moves the ball really well, sharp, hard worker. Barring injury, he looks great, and he looks like a guy who you can build a quicker offense on, which is something Munster need. Yeah. And then you look elsewhere around the park. I mean, going into next season, they could be in a situation where they have a fully fit and firing Joey Carberry at 10. Craig Casey with another year under his belt, Gavin Coombs with another year under his belt, a phenomenal forward pack, with Snyman coming back in, and Lindy in the midfield. They would be Champions Cup contenders if they can put all that together. So I don't think they're too far away at all. Yeah.
No, I think they're a very strong team, aren't they? And I was very impressed by them against Blues last weekend. I just thought they were so professional in the job that they did. Yeah. And I thought Blues actually played okay at the start. Obviously, they got that early try, and then their ill discipline kicked in, and handbags were thrown, and everyone was like having a go at each other. But I have been impressed by Munster. I think their physicality, as you say, is the big thing, that power of the pack. And you see it in rugby. If you can get quick ball, if you can get over the gain line, you tend to win games. And that's where Munster are thriving this season. They get over the gain line. They've got powerful runners like Diolande. They'll have Snyman coming back next year, which will be massive for them. Let's jump to Connacht then. Thoughts on Connacht this season? Because obviously a few years ago they won the league, pretty surprising if we're being totally honest. This season, second in the league, and we'll get onto the whole Irish 4 regions at the top of both conferences later. But your thoughts on Connacht this season? What do you make of them?
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, their original journey did start with Pat Lam, and it was Pat Lam's Connacht that went and won that league. And he completely transformed them from being this sort of like almost like a little Munster impersonator without the same kind of personnel. They used to play just sort of dogged rugby and hope for terrible conditions in the west of Ireland and grind teams to a halt. Yeah. And then Pat Lam came in, and that was really the start of their renaissance when he basically just turned the whole thing around, made a couple of shrewd acquisitions and focused entirely on skill set and speed, which, he's done that with Bristol since. It's very much a moniker of the man. And he completely transformed them. And in 2016, they caught the whole league napping, just playing quick, classy attacking rugby and taking tries and playing at a different speed from the rest of the league. They went and won the competition. Now, he got poached and went off to Bristol. And then they got Kieran Keane in, who was the Chiefs assistant coach out in New Zealand, which seemed like a good acquisition at the time, but he didn't work out at all. No. And they regressed, and he just seemed to have this weird attitude in charge of them where he was hostile with the media and other things. It was a curiosity. So they ended up having to ditch him after a couple of poor years. And then they got in Andy Friend a couple of years back now. I think 2018 was his first year, and he's the guy who's in charge now. And there's a lot to like about Andy Friend. He's trying to do a similar thing to what Pat Lam did. They're trying to play nice attacking footy. And he's embraced the community really well. He goes out and talks to the media. He talks to the fans. He very much embraced the West of Ireland culture. And on the first season, it looked like they were going from strength to strength. They qualified for Europe. They were moving really well. But they haven't, if we're honest, they haven't really kicked on. Like they're playing good rugby. They're a little lacking in certain areas, and they still have that terrible knack of losing tight games. They do, yeah. No, one of the other things we were going to credit with Munster is just the intangible quality of having a winning mentality as a club and a winning tradition as a club. Like Munster find ways to win games, and Leinster do something similar where they have no right to, and they've played none of the rugby. Connacht have the opposite talent where they play all of the brilliant, bright, razzle-dazzle rugby in the fixture and then somehow end up losing it, and frequently losing it with 3 tries on the board and 8 points behind for no league points at all. And it's an amazing knack they do to play really exciting attacking rugby, but letting kind of key moments of the game pass them by. And there's a bad habit for Jack Carty, who can look lovely for patches of a game, can go completely absent then in the second half. And you couple that with like the tight 5 aren't as physical, certainly as what Munster will be presenting in Thomond Park. So they have to be a little bit more circumspect. They have to avoid rucks. They have to keep the tempo high, and all of that can create a kind of a frenetic energy where it's not quite in control. And unless you're really accurate in executing in those conditions, it can be very, very tough to close out games, and games can slip away from you. You're kind of riding a momentum wave when you end up scoring a lot. But at the same time, they can get on the wrong side of that momentum and find it very, very tough to save themselves a lot of the time. They are. What I will say for Connacht is that they are, without question, the most, certainly in Ireland, they're the best value for money as far as just being a neutral watching the game is concerned. Even the game they had against Benetton last week was a home dinger. Yeah. Like all the games they're in are great to watch. They play with a zest and a love for the game that's almost infectious when you're watching it. They have some fantastic players. The real danger to look out for is in the back three. Matt Healy and Tiernan O'Halloran on the wing and fullback have been stalwarts since that 2016 season and are still as lethal as ever in many ways. Yeah. And then the real danger man is another one of these shrewd acquisitions that they made, is John Porch, who's the guy on the right wing, who's, for me, without question, their player of the season. He's their most dangerous man this year. They brought him in from the Australian Sevens team a couple of years back. And he's absolutely taken the game by the scruff of the neck this year. And every touch is electric. He has just this great offensive mindset. He fits so well into the club. Yeah. And getting those guys on the ball, keeping the tempo high and punishing Munsters in discipline with clinicality is their keys to win this weekend. Not dissimilar to a Welsh equation facing a big burly English pack. They need to be quicker. They need to be smarter. They need to take tries when they're there. And if Munster give away penalties, punish them. Punish them on the scoreboard. Exactly. And keep pressure on them that way, because the biggest differential between these two teams is actually on the bench. Munster have a much stronger bench, and they'll if it's a tight game with 20 to go,
Munster will probably flex and win that.
Yeah, I was looking back at some of Connacht's games, and they played against us, Ospreys, probably over a month ago now, and it was a fantastic game. And yet we came out on top. Reece Webb got, I think, a couple of tries. I think George North got one try as well. And I got that sense as well that the physicality maybe wasn't quite there, that they could play beautiful, flowing, attacking rugby, almost barbarian style. But when the game is dictated by the opposition, where they're keeping the ball, they're maybe going through the phases, they're kicking in the right areas, they're using the driving maul, or Ospreys, we don't play the most beautiful rugby, for goodness sake. We got Stephen Myler at 10, he's not going to fly 40 yards past, but he's been brilliant for us, so I'm not going to knock the guy. But for Connacht, again, for me in this game, and we'll look at the teams in a second, it really depends on who dictates this game, who controls how this game is played. If Munster can keep it tight, can use their power, can use their physicality, and keep the ball very close to them, not looking to spread it out wide too much, and not kick loosely, then this is probably Munster's game. But if the game opens up, then you'd expect Connacht to bounce on that. Would you both agree with that?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, Munster definitely have a higher tempo than in seasons past. But it's going to be more rhythmic. It is going to be power based. It's going to involve, obviously they don't have a Del Indy in the team. They have him on the bench, which is going to be devastating in the last 10 minutes. But they have like Chris Farrell at 13 and Gavin Coombs at 8 and Jack O'Donoghue in there as well at 6. As I would say, they're primary ball carriers, and getting them playing off. I think Casey most often, but also Ben Healy, just picking hard lines and busting through, throwing the occasional offload, getting in behind them, running another ruck, running another power play, using their physicality that way. But it needs to have a verve and a rhythm to it. Otherwise, Munster can kind of get stuck in the mud and end up kicking the ball. So I don't think they need to play with no tempo, but definitely Connacht are looking for, all the tempo.
They want the game, are the enemy, set pieces are the enemy.
The game to be played in the extremities, the ball to be in John Porch's hands as often as possible. That's the game they want to play all day.
The winning picture for Connacht involves those back three that we were mentioning, getting their hands on the ball often and in space. Like we need to see a lot more of them than we see. If we're seeing a lot of Thornbury wrestling for the ball in the tight exchanges, or guys in the tight, even Beelum, who's been carrying really well for them in other games, like if he's running into a red wall for the whole day, that's just it's not going to break Munster down. Munster love defending that kind of stuff. So it needs to be high tempo, kind of wide attacked, and they do need to go in at all guns blazing, because it's cup final footy for them. As far like they're 9 points adrift, I think, before this game kicks off. In theory, with a very unlikely winning bonus point, that narrows the gap such that they have, with these last few fixtures, something to play for and a potential to get themselves in the final. But losing this game will just scrub that out entirely. So they really need to go in there and try and throw the ball around as best they can, and just try and open them up and build a lead and stick with it is Connacht's real hope for this game. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, I think Connacht are going to have to look to play, hopefully make for an entertaining game. Just quickly looking at both teams then. For me, again, the power, the names are just there, aren't they? The power on that side for Munster is very, very evident. And then for Connacht as well, they're going to look to throw the ball about. They're going to look to pass the ball about and play some attractive rugby as well. I'm going to put you both on the spot here. Your predictions for this one, how do you see it going? I don't need an exact score, but are you backing Munster to get the job done at home? Because for me, I just think Munster are going to have that little bit too much for Connacht on the day. But I think that, the weather conditions could make a big difference as well to how this game is played.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget Connacht are the only team to knock Leinster off this year. So they have that big game credentials. Like, for me, it's just a question of form. Like, at their very best, Bundy Aki and Tom Daly are going to bust through and be competitive, but they haven't been great in recent games. I love the form of a lot of the Munster players. I love the Munster bench. I mean, you looked at that starting front row of Cronin, Scannell and Archer. It's a phenomenal scrummaging front row. And then on the bench, they've got Jeremy Loughlin and John Ryan to bring on a prop.
Like
really good
it's
technical
debatable
scrummagers.
which ones are the better ones. Like you could just flip those entirely and have no diminished returns, whereas with Connacht you can't say the same.
Indeed. I can't see Connacht fronting up front. I don't think they have enough playmakers. They're all sort of, everyone in that Connacht pack is better on the ball than in defence.
Yeah.
And it's that, therefore it's imbalanced. You need guys who love defending in your pack, and they just don't have that. So I just don't see them coping physically. I think Munster are there is a way Connacht can win with a load of Munster conceded penalties and Munster just sort of out of rhythm and Connacht punishing them for it.
Yeah.
But in all probability, I think this is a bonus point win for Munster. I just think they're too strong up front, and they actually have some quality in the back line to make it count.
Yeah, I think it'll be tight for periods. I think Connacht will come with a gameness and a fight, and I think the first half will be very exciting, and hopefully we see some good scores, ideally from Connacht, to make it a proper scrap. But as you said, it's the final quarter where all of these kind of things, these imbalances, like I'm looking at Ultan Delan and Gavin Thornbury as the starting locks and thinking like they're going to be up against it for the whole game. They're pretty lightweight. They're pretty athletic when, as you say, when they have the ball in hand, they can hit a nice line. But when they're having to soak tackles the whole time, it's going to weigh on them in the end. And I'd expect, Munster in their classic fashion might be grabbing a bonus point try at about 79 minutes from a maul or something in a very kind of muscular, we're stronger than you, we're better than you, and we're